Hello, folks. Welcome to Rational Science, the only site on the internet that does physics rationally. And you may wonder why you don't see the Andromeda Galaxy behind me. It's because I'm on the road, and I'll probably be on the road for a couple weeks. Anyways, today we're going to talk about the electron. Last week we talked about the proton. Today we're going to do with its buddy, the negative electron bead. And the main point today is going to be, how did we arrive at this notion that the electron is a bead, a little particle that goes around the nucleus of the atom? And that's what we're going to investigate today. Anyways, here we have a fellow who more or less, he put a comment, and I liked his comment. He put like 3 paragraphs, and I'm going to quote all 3 of them because I think he hit it pretty much on the nose. What the problem is with, I hope you can all hear me, okay, because again, I'm on the road, and I'm worried that technology might fail me, but okay, good, thank you for that, thank you for letting me know. Anyways, we're going to talk about the electron today, and this fellow sent me a comment, a visitor, and he made like 3 paragraphs. I'm going to quote all 3 of them because all 3 paragraphs I think hit it pretty much on the on the nose exactly of what the problem is with mathematical physics today. And the main point there I want you to keep in mind is no one in the last 10,000 years has defined what a thing is, what an object is, what an entity is, what a medium is. All these words are synonyms in physics. No one has ever defined these words. And therefore, people say, well, is an electron an object? Is a proton an object? Is a neutron an object? Well, we won't know until we define what an object is first. And nobody knows what an object is. That's where the problem is. That's where the problem starts. And this, I think, pretty much synthesized a lot of the problems that we find with with quantum mechanics, okay, especially, but mathematical physics in general. And he says the following. He says the word physics is only relevant to the classical world in any sense of a physical. Even then, the concept of anything that we call physical is really on shaky ground. Absolutely. So no, we don't appear to have anything in the universe that is represented by the classical concept of something physical. Okay? There is nothing physical as far as a discrete object is concerned. So he's talking about a discrete object, and he says it's not a physical thing. So what is an object? What is a discrete object? Okay? And then he says, is an invisible but measurable force. Physical, he's talking about force right now, right? And force is a concept. Obviously, a force has to be mediated by an object. But he doesn't ask that question. He says, is the force, the concept, right? Is that physical? And he says, is a magnetic field physical? Again, field is a concept, a bunch of numbers. It's a value at each point in space. That's how it's defined. So you cannot say, is the field physical? No, field, like energy, like force, are all concepts. So is mass, so is time. These are concepts. You do not treat them as physical objects. It's mathematical physics, which has treated them as objects all these years, right? And so it says, this is the closest there is in the universe that is representative of the word physical. It is just a force in an empty void. And so he's saying there's a concept called force in an empty void, which is nothing, and so far we have nothing in front of us. So all these people get the idea from mathematical physics that you can do physics without physical objects. That's what he's talking about. And he continues, and I like his kind of conclusion. He says everything is energy. So what is energy? Well, energy is another concept, mathematical concept, right? It's just a value. What is it? Electron volts? What are we talking? What units are we talking about, right? Are we talking about calories, And he says, our classical brain has trouble with that concept of the absence of any truly solid object or solid anything. Okay? So there is no solid thingy out there. The only reason we don't fall through the floor is why? Because of the non-material forces that resist it from happening. He thinks he's putting a word force, and he thinks he's talking about a thing that holds you up. No, force has to be mediated by something, because force is a verb, right? It's something in motion. And in order to have something in motion, you need an object. Only objects can produce motion. That's the definition of the word motion. Two or more locations of an object. You need the object. But he's doing it without any object. You think that force exists independent or, without the mediation of an object. It is all just empty space or a void. That's it. All they have in front of them is nothing. They think everything works by magic or by spirits or angels or who knows what. Action at a distance, what is that? That's the scientific term. You could call it really the mathematical term for what? For witchcraft and black magic. It's voodoo physics. You pinch the doll, right? And it hurts the other guy a mile away. Yeah, that's known as magic. And that's what they're doing. They're doing action at a distance, all of it. They don't explain what mediator, what physical, what agent mediates that transaction. Matter is just another representation of what? Of energy, a non-material force. Okay, so he's got this thing called energy. He calls it a non-material force, and he's at peace with that. That's what he's been taught. That's what he learned in school or wherever, right? And he just repeats this. He thinks there's nothing really out there. In fact, I had a chemist tell me that, because this is what he was taught in college, that objects are really made of motion. There is no such thing as an object. An object is really motion. And that's more or less the notion that string theory has, where an object is what the vibration of a string, and it's not a string because we're not talking about a string, we're talking about a 1D line, which ain't a line either. It's not a geometric line. What they're talking about is itinerary, which looks like when you close the loop, it looks like a rubber band, and this one-dimensional itinerary vibrates, and that's what a particle is. So, they're all saying the same thing. There's nothing there. There's just a bunch of abstract concepts that these people are dealing with, okay? So he says, matter is just another representation of energy, non-material force. So everything that there is in the universe is energy, non-material in the classical sense. And force is like the field of a magnet, also non-material. See, these people think that there's nothing there. They think it's just some abstraction. There's a force because he can't see or touch it, so he says there's nothing there. He's thinking that an object is that which you can see or touch, and that's an irrational definition for the word object. Again, no one has defined the term object in the last 10,000 years. That's where we have to start at the definition of this basic word. Also, the word exists, by the way. It says there is no true physical universe. This is his conclusion. He believes that there's nothing there physical, whatever he thinks physical is. In truth, that would mean physics. Study of the physics is an incorrect term for this study or how our universe works. Well, there I have to agree with him. If physics is what the mathematicians do, then it's got nothing to do with physics, and they should not use the word physics to designate what they do. They do math. Those are relations, got nothing to do with physics whatsoever. And that's the state of the art today, okay? This is where we stand. Okay, and here we have, just in case, good old Feynman, Richard Feynman. He says, it is important to realize that in physics today we have no knowledge of what energy is. Nobel Prize, 1965. That's what he said. He thought energy was a what? And it's not. It's a concept. In fact, it's defined as what? The capacity, the ability. Obviously, that's not a physical object. Okay, if you think the capacity is a physical object, please draw it for me. I'd like to see it. And this fellow concludes, remember last week we had the proton, and so he goes in there and says, what does a proton look like? Anything you want them to look like. So he says, just put anything you want. You can put a rabbit in there if you want. Doesn't matter. That doesn't have anything to do with what they are in the universe actually. Yeah, okay, I don't have a problem with that in the sense that the theorist has to tell me what he has in his brain, in his mind. He's got to put whatever he thinks the proton is up there, right? So he wants to put a rabbit. I have no problem. Put a rabbit up there and do your physics, your dissertation, do it with the rabbit. Then we can all follow his presentation. But you got to put something there. You can't begin saying, well, it's a field, it's energy, it's a charge. No. Or a mass, right? No. You can't use those words because those are concepts. You need to put something on the screen. Okay? And he says, the universe is stranger than fiction. Well, yeah, if you're going to be doing everything with nothing, with concepts, then it's going to be very strange, believe me. Father Universe is going to be the strangest individual you ever found. Concerning the subject matter today, another fellow says, the electron appears to be what? Point-like. Okay? Where they got this, I don't know. We're going to find out today, right? With an internal structure, except possibly at the superstring scale. Superstring. Where do you get this? And like all leptons, it has an antimatter companion, the positron. Okay, so we have and what is a positron? It's antimatter. It's just a different sign than the electron. So if the electron is negative, the positron is a positive electron. That's all it is. Okay, and so what have we learned? And they say when the two meet, they annihilate. Do they mean annihilate? Do they mean they disappear from this universe? No. When they come together, they turn into two different particles. And those two particles turn into two other particles. That's what they call annihilation. They say it disappeared. It ceased to exist. Not true. It just morphed into something else. It's like morphing tree into table. That's the same thing that they're saying here. It never disappeared, and they use this word annihilation, and people say, okay, I understand what that is. It disappeared. It's turned into empty space. Not true. It turns into two more particles. And then another fellow says, the universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. Where did he get this? Well, let's find out where he got it. Here's a fellow who said exactly the same thing, just by sheer coincidence. His name is Neil Tyson. Some of you know him, right? And this is what Neil had to say. Listen to him carefully. Here it goes.
The universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. What that means is your 5 traditional senses. They're not as good at contemplating infinity. You can't intuit infinitesimal. They're things that are impossible for us.
Okay, and just in case, because Neil said it a couple times, here is another time where he mentioned that. It looks like it's one of his favorite phrases, right? Listen to him again. Here it is, very short.
The universe is under no obligation to make sense to us. It's the observations that matter, even if they conflict what feels right to you.
So what's wrong with what Neil said? Well, very simple. The universe doesn't have to have any obligation, right, to match what I have in my head or to make sense to me, right? It's the theorist, the guy giving the presentation. He has to make sense to us. Okay, so when the guy gives a presentation up there in front of the crowd, he's got to make sense. So what is he saying really? He's saying that, so you got to understand the context. That's why so that you can contradict what he's saying there. He's saying that he represents Father Universe. Okay? And so Father Universe is speaking through his mouth to the crowd. Why? Because Father Universe speaks the language of the mathematicians, equations, numbers, variables. And so what he's saying is he represents God. Like in the old days, the priest represented God in the village. He was the only guy who knew how to read or write, the only guy who could read the Bible. So he said, let me interpret the Bible for you. This is what God is saying. And this is no different. This is absolutely no different. Here you have the physicist claiming, the mathematical physicist, the mathematician, he's representing Father Universe, right? He's saying, look, the language of the universe, of Father Universe, is math. And who else can interpret that for you except me, who studied 10 years at the university and took a lot of calculus? I speak the language of Father Universe. Let me tell you what he's saying. And so what they're essentially saying to you is that they represent the Father Universe. You got to listen to them. And you don't have to agree with what Father Universe is saying through them, because you won't understand it. But Father Universe has no obligation to have his universe work the way you want it to work. In other words, the way the mathematicians are telling you that it works. That's the context here. So this is what these people are doing. They're getting away with murder, because what they're saying is they represent Father Universe, because Father Universe speaks the language of math. And if you want to understand how he works, meaning why he works the way he does, causes, mechanisms, you got to listen to the mathematicians. He's going to interpret it for you. He's the priest of the modern world. Okay, that's the context. And just to rub that in, here we have a fellow, a lot of you